Emma Sullivan swung from the monkey bars, her pigtails bouncing wildly as she laughed joyfully under a bright sun that bathed the park in golden light. The air smelled fresh and sweet after the rain yesterday evening had washed away the summer grime of city life. Whoosh! Emma let go with one hand to catch the chains and pulled herself up, her gap-toothed grin wider than ever as she giggled and swung back down again. She loved this park. There were plenty of trees, swings that squeaked pleasantly under her weight, a sandbox where sand glittered in specks of light dancing through leaves, and even an old fountain bubbling softly nearby. Nearby, Zeth'ara crouched behind some bushes, her gray skin stark against the green foliage. She was injured. Shards of metal from her broken shuttle pierced through fabric that had once protected her. Her sharp features were etched with pain and confusion as she tried to ignore it all, the bleeding wound, the fear creeping into her mind. She heard a child's laughter nearby, but didn't react. Her kind were trained since birth never to show weakness, let alone approach anything weaker or less advanced than themselves. Yet something about this girl's pure-hearted sound made Zeth'ara hesitate in the shadows. Emma noticed movement out of the corner of her eye and stopped mid-swing, tilting her head as she saw a tall gray figure lurking near the bushes. She hopped down from the bars with no hint of fear and approached cautiously, but bravely nonetheless. "Are you lost?" Her voice was gentle yet curious. Zeth'ara froze at Emma's approach. No one had ever come so close without screaming or running away before. Her mind raced, trying to understand this new creature who offered help instead of terrorizing her kind, as most species did when they caught a glimpse of Zeth'ara warriors like herself. But the little human child was undeterred. "Please don't be scared," Emma continued with wide eyes and an open heart that seemed impossible in such a brave gesture toward someone so different from her own kind. "You look hurt." Zeth'ara's black eyes widened, fear mingling with something she couldn't comprehend, yet some sort of longing or hope that perhaps this child wasn't part of the usual human hatred for Zeth'ara. The air crackled around them as Zeth'ara prepared to fight, if necessary, but Emma was already bending down beside her. "You're hurt," Emma observed, touching lightly on a wound with care and concern shining through in every word spoken softly yet clearly. "My mom has band-aids." For the first time since crashing here alone without allies or even hope of rescue anytime soon, Zeth'ara found herself at a loss. Her clawed hand twitched nervously as she stared down at this child who somehow looked right past everything about her that normally sent others running for cover. "You don't look dangerous," Emma said with conviction, reaching out tentatively but firmly to grasp Zeth'ara's injured limb gently in her small hands. "You look sad." Zeth'ara didn't know how to react. No one had ever seen past the fear and assumed kindness instead. Her breath caught audibly as a strange warmth spread through her chest, a mix of confusion, pain from injuries mingling with an unfamiliar comfort. "I get scared too sometimes," Emma continued earnestly, looking up at Zeth'ara now that she'd made initial contact without causing panic. "But my mom always tells me it's okay to be afraid, and we can talk about it together." Zeth'ara could feel tears welling in her own eyes as this brave human child offered more than just medical aid, but something much deeper: acceptance and empathy. She had never experienced anything like that from another species before, not even among those of her own kind. "You should run," Zeth'ara finally said, voice strained by the effort to keep calm under such unusual circumstances. "They'll be here soon." Emma's brow furrowed in confusion, but she shook it off quickly. "I think you need a hug," Emma decided simply instead, and wrapped her arms around one of Zeth'ara's legs. Despite being so small, it was an act of pure compassion, which left even hardened warrior Zeth'ara momentarily speechless, and then unable to stop herself from returning the gesture, hesitantly pulling Emma closer for just a moment before releasing again. For the first time in her long life as a feared Cathari hunter, Zeth'ara had encountered something that made her question everything about how she lived, how they all existed. And it was because of an 8-year-old girl named Emma Sullivan who looked past species and saw only another soul needing care. Emma's hug felt warmer than the sunlight above them as the two stood together under a tree in this quiet park, changing each other's futures with nothing more than simple human kindness. Emma took a step back and glanced around at their surroundings. The park was bustling with people, but she knew they needed to find somewhere quieter, safer for Zeth'ara. "Come on," Emma said firmly, tugging gently on the alien's hand, despite knowing it could be dangerous. "There's a greenhouse over there where we can hide." Zeth'ara hesitated, her black eyes flickering in confusion and fear as she scanned their environment, suspicious of every person who passed by, with an unspoken dread that they might turn into a threat at any moment. "But people will be looking for you," Emma continued logically. "They'll see you here." Zeth'ara's claws twitched nervously, her instinctive defensive posture tightening as she realized the gravity and potential danger of being discovered amidst the humans who now viewed creatures like herself with such fear and hostility. Yet, something in this child's unwavering determination made Zeth'ara hesitate to argue. "You're right," Zeth'ara finally responded quietly, after a moment's internal struggle against her ingrained survival mechanisms, deciding to trust these new emotions that felt both exhilarating yet terrifyingly unfamiliar. "Let us go." Emma nodded eagerly and led the way towards the greenhouse at the edge of the park, a small wooden structure housing various plants that thrived in controlled environments, protected from harsh weather elements. It was usually busy with gardeners during daytime hours, but now it stood empty except for a lone worker watering some rows of greenery near one corner. The air inside smelled richly of soil and blooming flora as Emma opened the door gently and stepped through into relative quietude, where only soft rustling sounds could be heard from within. She looked back at Zeth'ara, who paused uncertainly outside, her dark eyes wide with anxiety about entering a place so alien to what she knew. "It's okay," Emma encouraged softly but firmly, as if speaking not just to the injured Cathari before her, but also reassuring herself against any lurking doubts or fears. "It's safe in here." Zeth'ara took one more deep breath, eyes surveying every corner of the greenhouse, quickly scanning for potential dangers, finding none that she could perceive within this small haven from the outside world. Stepping inside hesitantly behind Emma now, Zeth'ara noted how differently everything felt. The warmth and humidity contrasted sharply with her dry-skinned plants, in varied shapes reached out towards sunlight filtered through glass panes overhead, creating dappled patterns on both of them. A soft hum buzzed quietly from somewhere deeper within the building, indicating artificial lights kept alive for plant growth. "Sit down over here," Emma said kindly, leading Zeth'ara further inside to a patch near one side farthest away from any windows, where sunlight wouldn't directly shine in until later evening hours, when this area would remain cooler. She carefully positioned herself close beside her new friend, and looked up into those black eyes with such sincerity it almost made Zeth'ara wince. "Are you okay?" Emma asked quietly, genuinely concerned for the wounded warrior's well-being, despite knowing how little she could really do to alleviate injuries that might have been caused by far more formidable foes than mere humans. The scent of blooming flowers mixed oddly yet not unpleasantly with metallic taints carried on Zeth'ara's clothes from previous battles and encounters. Zeth'ara swallowed hard, trying to find words when her kind rarely communicated beyond necessary battle instructions or terse commands regarding strategy and survival tactics. "I am grateful," she managed eventually, through a mix of relief at being in such an isolated spot away from immediate danger combined with sheer surprise over human compassion. Emma reached into her backpack, then, pulling out half-eaten sandwich wrapped neatly inside plastic wrap meant to keep food fresh while moving around town. She offered it without hesitation towards Zeth'ara, who stared blankly down at the simple meal, confused more than anything about why this child would share such a personal item with someone so different from themselves. "It's okay if you're hungry," Emma said kindly, noticing confusion in those black eyes as well as fear and wariness. "I'll get my lunch tomorrow." Zeth'ara hesitated for several moments before reaching out tentatively to take the sandwich. She had never tasted human food. It looked strange compared to what her species typically consumed, but somehow kind. The thought was foreign, yet not entirely unwelcome. As she brought a bite towards her mouth, Emma watched closely with wide eyes, hopeful that this tiny act of kindness would be accepted without fear or rejection by the stranger sitting beside her. She continued talking eagerly about normal things to fill awkward silences while Zeth'ara slowly adjusted herself amidst unfamiliar textures and flavors, touching lips for first time in what felt like an eternity. "I have a dog at home," Emma mentioned brightly, trying to make small talk as usual, but finding it oddly difficult considering the gravity of their situation. "His name is Whiskers." Zeth'ara paused mid-bite, looking down into her lap. The sandwich lay mostly untouched despite having taken several nibbles, each one bringing with it new sensations and emotions conflicting within her chest area, making breathing feel strained under these unusual circumstances. "Do you have pets?" Emma asked innocently enough while gazing curiously at Zeth'ara, who seemed lost in thought, trying to understand so many aspects of human life suddenly being thrust upon them both. "Like a cat?" She shook head slightly without fully answering, although it seemed clear she had encountered similar creatures during her travels across different worlds, yet never quite the same level of familiarity as one kept inside home walls like pets. "No," Zeth'ara replied softly, after swallowing another bite thoughtfully, feeling this exchange unusually intimate compared to any prior conversations conducted with other members belonging within Zeth'ara ranks. "But I know what they are." Emma leaned closer slightly in excitement at finding common ground despite vast differences separating them both species. Her eyes wide and full of wonderment, while Zeth'ara felt oddly connected through this shared topic. "Really?" Emma giggled softly, looking back up with such innocence it almost made Zeth'ara smile, but she couldn't quite manage the exact expression yet. "What's your favorite kind?" Her dark gaze softened, then, in rare moment where warriors hardened exterior or began to crumble ever so slightly under influence of pure-hearted girl before her, who saw beyond what society taught about fear and hatred towards outsiders. "I have never thought much upon it," Zeth'ara admitted quietly, more out loud than intended, as if breaking silence between species for first time in memory brought its own unique burdens yet freedoms. "But seeing your whiskers makes me curious now." Emma beamed proudly at this unexpected compliment while reaching over gently to touch lightly on wounded limbs still bandaged from earlier attempt Emma made using Mom's simply cautious but not afraid, and a more once trust started building between them. "You look hurt," she pointed out softly, eyes filled with concern as Zeth'ara flinched slightly, under gentle contact, despite knowing intentions were purely good, unlike those meant to harm her in past battles fought elsewhere across galaxy. My mom has bandages and stuff if you need more. Zeth'ara nodded slowly, recognizing both offer of aid plus reminder that help could come from unexpected sources, sometimes, like little girls willing brave enough face dangers others avoid merely out of fear based on preconceived notions rather than actual experiences. You should run, Zeth'ara suddenly said, in strained voice reflecting deep internal conflict now plaguing her mind, as much physical wounds did body. They'll be here soon looking for me. Emma frowned slightly at this warning, but didn't back away or show any signs of hesitation despite being told to leave, which meant a lot considering bravery Emma showed earlier when approaching Zeth'ara alone in park. I think you need a hug, she stated simply, instead wrapping small arms tightly around one leg still touching ground, while looking up into surprised black eyes meeting her own unwaveringly, without flinching under gaze that held so much fear yet now seemed to contain flickers of hope too. Zeth'ara hesitated for longest moment before finally closing those dark orbs briefly, allowing herself feel weightless comfort brought by pure kindness wrapped around them. For several heartbeats silence fell over Greenhouse as these two beings from different worlds found themselves connected in ways neither could have imagined possible just hours ago. Both changed irrevocably through simple act of human compassion. Can I help you? Emma asked earnestly, looking back up into eyes now softened ever so slightly by unaccustomed sensations running high tide within Alien's heart. I'll get my dad too. He fixes everything. Zeth'ara opened her eyes again, meeting those wide-eyed innocent gazes full of determination and trust, something she had seen rarely, even amongst her own kind, let alone beings like humans whom society taught to fear so greatly. She nodded once slowly, deciding finally that maybe there was some truth in Child's words, that perhaps help could indeed come from unexpected places, if one were brave enough accept it without preconditions. Thank you, Zeth'ara said quietly, voice barely above whisper yet carrying weight of gratitude not easily expressed amidst battlefields and wars fought across galaxies. Without further delay Emma jumped up eagerly, rushing towards door while calling back over shoulder without breaking pace, "Wait here. I'll be right back." Zeth'ara watched her go with a mix of emotions swirling inside: worry about being discovered alongside hope that this child might offer genuine assistance, instead usual hostility. She sat there waiting silently, amidst unfamiliar warmth and smells surrounding them both in Greenhouse, heart beating fast yet strangely calm under unusual circumstances brought by encounter with little girl named Emma Sullivan. Emma returned home, quickly gathering her father's tools before rushing back towards park, feeling more determined than ever to help someone who clearly needed it despite everything she had been taught about such things. Little did either of them know how much this simple act would change futures far beyond just their own isolated circumstances in quiet corner of world unknown until now. Emma ran home as fast as her legs could carry her, calling over shoulder without stopping once to ensure Zeth'ara wouldn't disappear while she was gone. She needed help, but more importantly wanted to prove that even small acts made a difference. Maybe humans weren't entirely at odds with others after all, if this alien warrior believed in Child's promise of aid rather than fear. Zeth'ara waited, expectant, anxiety gripping her insides as every second stretched longer, anticipation mixed heavily with dread about outcome awaiting them both now. When she heard door open again signaling Emma's return, but no familiar sounds or threats from soldiers approaching, instead Something shifted inside Hart that rarely felt emotions beyond duty and survival. A child had come back, not alone this time, though rather accompanied by a parent, whose face held visible mix of terror along with protective instincts towards daughter, who stood beside him resolutely offering words meant to calm, while also showing fierce determination in eyes reflecting bravery, unseen with an alien's own kind until now. Emma burst through her front door, panting slightly from her quick run, but not slowing down as she called out loudly enough for David to hear across the house. "Daddy, I found something important at the park. I need your help." David emerged from the kitchen where he had been preparing lunch, wiping his hands on a towel. His expression shifted immediately between concern and confusion when he saw Emma's determined face coupled with her wide eyes filled with urgency. "What is it? Is everything okay?" Emma nodded firmly without hesitation. "Yes, but well." She paused briefly to gather herself before continuing more carefully, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone or something to follow closely behind them. "There's an alien hurt in the park." David blinked several times, his mouth dropping open slightly before he managed a stunned laugh that quickly turned into a cough of disbelief. "An alien?" he asked, incredulous and unsure whether to believe what was being said or if this might be some sort of imaginative play gone too far for an 8-year-old. Still holding on to the towel in one hand, he moved closer towards Emma with cautious steps, but clear intent on finding out more about her statement. "Okay, let's go see," David agreed slowly, as realization began sinking into his mind that perhaps there really was something unusual happening beyond just another day of parenting young kids who sometimes mixed reality and fantasy too closely together. He set down the towel finally, following Emma back outside immediately without delay once she confirmed they had to hurry. Outside again, under the bright autumn sunlight casting golden hues across lawns around houses nearby as birds chirped overhead in cheerful contrast amidst otherwise quiet neighborhood surroundings, David saw something that made his heart skip a beat with shock and disbelief. Standing not too far off where Emma directed him was indeed what appeared like an alien, not just from movies or books about extraterrestrial life forms, but one resembling descriptions often talked about among conspiracy circles as being the most terrifying species known across galaxies, according to tales shared privately between humans. Zeth'ara waited silently under tree shade nearby, posture less threatening now than it had been before when Emma first approached her with open curiosity and kindness. Wounds visibly marring skin suggested recent injury that required immediate attention, which aligned perfectly well enough with David's own expertise in machinery repair beyond simple human ailments, but also hinted towards potentially dangerous situation considering aliens' origin. Before either could speak again, Sarah rushed out from side door of their house, catching sight of unusual trio standing together unexpectedly close to each other. She too gasped audibly upon seeing Zeth'ara, despite knowing her husband had always believed such encounters impossible beyond realm of imagination and science fiction fantasies often joked about by friends over beers, late-night conversations. "David, Emma, what's going on?" Sarah asked hurriedly as she joined them cautiously, eyes darting back and forth nervously between human family members and alien figures standing amidst park setting they usually visited weekly for leisure activities such as picnics or afternoon walks together under normal circumstances, completely devoid of such dramatic introductions. "Mama," Emma said confidently, stepping forward towards Sarah while pointing directly at Zeth'ara, She needs help. Please don't be scared, she's just hurt. Sarah bit down on her lip tightly, trying hard to control rising panic within, but also felt growing sense that this situation deserved understanding rather than outright fear, given how matter-of-factly Emma treated it as everyday occurrence instead rare or dangerous event threatening lives around them. Is she? Sarah couldn't finish sentence, asking if Zeth'ara truly represented threat, despite having grown up hearing stories about Cathari being among most lethal species ever encountered by humans during brief interstellar conflicts long ago. Yet something felt different today, beyond mere imagination and into reality that needed addressing properly, even though it seemed surreal. Wait here, David instructed firmly to both girls and his family before approaching Zeth'ara with slow measured steps, keeping hands visible, but ready for whatever might come next, whether positive or negative outcome resulting from close encounter taking place under sunny autumn afternoon, light casting shadows across faces, showing various emotions ranging from bravery to fearfulness amongst all present. Zeth'ara watched David approach warily as well, though remained silent and still allowing humans make first move towards potential resolution. Beyond initial meeting, when young girl named Emma had offered unexpected kindness amidst their unfamiliar environment, David stopped a few feet away, keeping his voice calm yet firm as he spoke directly to Zeth'ara in what seemed like attempt at establishing some form of communication despite language barriers likely present between them. Are you okay? David asked, clearly trying to gauge immediate needs, whether medical assistance or simply need for safe shelter before anyone else could react negatively due to overwhelming circumstances unfolding so suddenly. Zeth'ara nodded slightly, eyes moving briefly from ground towards David's face, acknowledging his question, even though she didn't fully understand words spoken at first glance based on telepathic nature of her species' communication methods rather than vocal sounds like humans relied upon for interaction. Emma tugged gently at Sarah's hand, seeing concern evident in mother's expression and deciding it was time to step up, as brave little girl who often faced fears alone now needed support from family around them too. Daddy, she needs help, Emma said again, firmly looking between both her parents, seeking reassurance that they understood critical nature of situation, even if it seemed surreal. Sarah stepped forward, gently placing hand on David's arm to steady herself, before nodding decisively towards Zeth'ara, despite lingering doubts inside mind about trusting unknown being from faraway galaxies known for their warrior-like tendencies and ruthless efficiency when hunting prey or enemies alike. Yet something about this specific encounter felt different, like perhaps there was chance here worth taking, even if it meant facing fears long held against unknown threats beyond Earth's atmosphere. Inside, Sarah decided aloud, firmly stepping towards Zeth'ara with small smile, attempting to convey warmth instead usual cautionary warnings often given by adults whenever encountering strange or unusual situations. Before someone sees, Zeth'ara's eyes widened slightly as she processed new suggestion coming from human woman who now seemed less afraid and more willing to offer assistance rather than immediate threat against her well-being, despite initial shock reactions shown previously. She hesitated briefly before nodding slowly, once again showing readiness to accept help offered, instead running away into shadows like instinctive reflexes might suggest under normal circumstances involving encountering species known primarily for hostility towards each other due long-standing conflicts across galaxies separating them. With that small yet significant act of mutual trust established between Emma's family and injured alien, they made their way back inside house, where Sarah led everyone cautiously but steadily through familiar doorways now leading to entirely different world compared usual daily routines previously experienced together. As Zeth'ara moved slowly following along behind David, who had gathered first aid supplies ready for treating injuries while ensuring everything remained calm despite unusual visitors amongst them today, it became clear that day in autumn would forever change lives, involve bringing new perspectives about understanding others beyond preconceived fears or biases deeply rooted within human society. Zeth'ara sat quietly in living room, accepting cup of tea with trembling hands, a simple gesture, but powerful symbol representing acceptance and hope amidst uncertainty brought by an unexpected encounter changing course unexpectedly. Around her, Emma's family members gathered close, ensuring she felt safe despite everything they had been taught about such beings, coming from distant stars, bringing chaos, instead harmony within communities touched by their presence. In this moment captured perfectly, under soft glow cast from lamps hanging above coffee table reflecting off cups filled with hot beverages, sitting alongside each other creating shared space, symbolizing unity amidst diversity, experienced rarely if ever before amongst Zeth'ara warrior, now finding refuge among humans, showing compassion despite overwhelming odds stacked against them both. Zeth'ara's eyes darted nervously around Emma's living room as Sarah handed her a cup of tea. The warmth from the ceramic cup seeped through her fingers, an unfamiliar sensation tingling up her arm. She looked down at it, unsure what to do. "Thanks," she murmured softly in English, glancing back up into Sarah's eyes with cautious gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." Sarah smiled gently and nodded understandingly, the corners of her mouth curling upwards, just enough to show sincerity without overstepping boundaries that still felt raw despite recent progress made between them all. Emma bounced excitedly beside Zeth'ara on a plush carpet cushioned with soft toys, her tiny hands clutching onto one stuffed animal tightly. She looked up at Sarah and David, then back towards the alien sitting before them in amazement mixed with awe-filled curiosity. "Tell me more about your world," she exclaimed eagerly. David crouched down beside Emma on another cushion nearby while Zeth'ara cleared her throat, straightening herself slightly into a comfortable yet attentive posture, as if preparing to share something important and deeply personal for the first time in front of others outside her own species. The room filled with soft ambient lighting from overhead lamps, casting subtle shadows across walls painted pastel colors, creating cozy atmosphere designed originally just for family gatherings, now expanded by an unexpected guest. Sarah handed Zeth'ara a small blanket, encouragingly patting its surface to invite further conversation and comfort. "We're all here," she said kindly. "You can take your time." Zeth'ara nodded slowly, accepting the offer of support with silent appreciation before finally beginning her tale in halting tones, but growing more fluent as confidence returned through each sentence delivered. "My people, the Zeth'ara, we are known throughout many galaxies for our hunting prowess and warrior spirit. Our missions often involve defending against threats that endanger entire planetary systems," Zeth'ara explained softly while staring at her cup of tea to avoid direct eye contact with anyone watching closely. A round room filled mostly by Emma's family members who listened intently. David leaned forward slightly on his knees to catch every word, absorbing story told in fragments interlaced between pauses, reflecting upon personal experiences, faraway home planet never visited again since fateful day, when mission parameters changed suddenly, compelling her towards distant reaches of universe, beyond expected trajectory leading directly into heartbreakingly new reality, awaiting exploration here amongst humans. We do not seek out violence unnecessarily, though others may fear us for actions taken previously, under different circumstances, she continued, hesitating momentarily before pushing forward past lingering doubts held internally about trusting strangers despite apparent goodwill shown thus far. I was on a routine mission when my ship malfunctioned, and I crash-landed here. She lifted her gaze slightly to meet concerned looks from human observers surrounding her. Emma tilted her head curiously, her eyes wide with wonder, as she listened intently to Zeth'ara's story. You came all the way here just because your spaceship was broken? Zeth'ara nodded slowly. Yes, and I did it knowing full well consequences of making such a drastic change mid-mission. She took another sip from her tea, finding comfort in its warmth seeping through fingers, still holding fragile vessel steadily despite trembling hand movements barely noticeable under close scrutiny. Alone. Why didn't you go back? David asked softly, his voice filled with genuine curiosity and empathy. The air around them felt thick with the weight of unspoken word questions about fear, bravery, and humanity's capacity to see beyond preconceived notions. Zeth'ara sighed deeply, closing her eyes momentarily, as memories flooded through neural pathways normally used for combat strategies now employed to process emotions rarely experienced outside structured Zeth'ara society. I had a choice to avert course slightly or continue straight into city center, risking destruction caused by collision. She opened her eyes once more, meeting gazes around room filled with people who had become temporary allies amidst unfamiliar territory far from home. I chose humans over mission parameters, she whispered softly, acknowledging the enormity of decision made in moment where everything shifted unexpectedly, forcing re-evaluation of priorities held most sacred amongst kin back on distant homeworlds. I didn't want anyone to die because of my mistake. Emma gasped softly at realization settling upon young mind, still developing understanding regarding complexities underlying choices faced by others far beyond simple acts like giving hugs or offering cups of tea, despite what appears initially daunting obstacles standing in way towards forming meaningful connections. David's expression softened further, nodding slowly, as if coming to terms with significance behind sacrifice made under duress. That takes a lot of courage, he said quietly but firmly, conveying respect earned through actions taken regardless outcome known beforehand. Sarah placed her hand gently on Emma's shoulder and then looked at Zeth'ara, offering another encouraging smile before asking softly, "Are there other Zeth'ara like you? Ones who might need help?" Zeth'ara blinked slowly, considering question thoughtfully. "There may be, but they are likely scattered across vast distances, making direct communication difficult." She paused briefly, reflecting upon logistical challenges involved in attempting to reconnect with fellow survivors amongst kin still searching for answers amidst chaos wrought by events unfolding simultaneously on multiple fronts. Emma tugged lightly at Sarah's sleeve, pulling her closer towards Alien now sitting beside them. "Can I hug you?" she asked timidly, voice barely above whisper, but filled with earnest desire despite initial shock displayed earlier upon first encounter between species. Zeth'ara stared down at the small child before her in disbelief and hesitation. She had never experienced a gesture of affection like this. Her people didn't touch for comfort, not even family members. But there was something in Emma's eyes that softened every last defense mechanism built up over years spent honing warrior instincts into finely tuned tools meant primarily to avoid situations exactly like this one. "Can I?" Emma repeated softly, her voice trembling slightly, but determined all the same. Zeth'ara's breath caught in her throat as she looked from Emma's hopeful face back towards David and Sarah, who nodded encouragement despite shared uncertainty about proper response dictated by customs foreign, even amongst closest kin. She hesitated only a moment longer before setting cup of tea down gently on coffee table nearby, then reaching out with trembling hand to receive hug offered freely without strings attached. Emma wrapped her small arms around Zeth'ara's waist, squeezing tightly and burying face in fabric covering Alien's torso while murmuring comfortingly, "It's okay. You're safe now." The sensation of warmth from child's embrace penetrated through layers of protective armor worn both physically and mentally by warrior, long accustomed to facing threats alone, but now finding solace amidst strangers offering kindness without question or hesitation. Zeth'ara closed her eyes tightly, tears forming for the first time in her life as emotions she didn't know how to process bubbled up inside, overwhelming defenses left standing against tide of unexpected compassion shown towards lone alien adrift amongst humans. She cried silently, feeling warmth and comfort seeping through barriers long held firm under stressors unique only those chosen path rarely traversed by kin forced into roles requiring strict adherence towards protocols dictating survival above all else. David watched the scene unfold with a mixture of awe and sadness in his eyes, finally seeing beyond surface level fears ingrained deep within societal norms surrounding encounters between species. He saw not an alien monster, but a mother, far from home, overwhelmed by emotions she had no way to express properly, under normal circumstances, dictated solely by rules governing interactions amongst kindred spirits isolated now more than ever due unexpected turn taken towards distant stars, leaving only fragmentary memories behind for those left wondering fate awaiting loved ones lost amidst chaos wrought when missions change mid-flight. Sarah stepped closer and placed a hand on Zeth'ara's shoulder, offering silent support, while Emma continued to hold her tightly. The room was filled with an eerie quiet as everyone absorbed the profound moment unfolding before them, bridging gaps between fear and understanding through simple acts of human kindness extended freely towards someone desperately in need despite barriers standing firmly rooted under layers of societal conditioning meant primarily to avoid situations exactly like this one. Zeth'ara opened her eyes slowly once more, feeling weight lifted temporarily from shoulders now warmed by an unexpected comfort found amidst unlikely allies gathered around living room filled with hope for future shaped uniquely through shared experiences forged here amongst strangers turned into something resembling family despite overwhelming odds stacked against them both. David stood at the window, staring out into the darkening evening as headlights from a convoy of military vehicles began to snake their way up the long driveway towards the Sullivan home. His heart was heavy, but he knew what needed to be done. "Emma," David called softly, turning away from the window and back towards the living room where Sarah sat beside Zeth'ara on the couch. "Can you please go upstairs? We need some time alone for a bit." The little girl's face fell at his words, but she nodded understandingly before hugging both Zeth'ara and Sarah tightly one last time. "Okay, I'll be in my room," Emma said with a determined look as if ready to wait out anything that came their way. Emma left the living room quickly, her small footsteps fading upstairs. The house was eerily quiet in a tense silence, filled only by distant hum of approaching vehicles, and Zeth'ara's rapid breathing as she sensed what was coming next. Sarah looked at David with a mixture of fear and determination etched on her face. "Are you sure this is necessary?" David nodded grimly, meeting Sarah's eyes squarely. "I'm sorry, but I don't think we have any choice now." Zeth'ara lifted her head from where she had been resting it against the back of the couch, black eyes wide, as they locked onto David's face, and a piercing stare filled with unspoken questions and desperate pleas for understanding. David felt compelled to explain himself further. "They're just here to do their job," he said firmly, though not without sympathy towards Zeth'ara, who must have been terrified by this unfamiliar invasion of privacy and power dynamics far removed from anything known amongst her own kind, where authority rested clearly within established hierarchy rather than arbitrary borders separating sovereign territories. "Wait outside, Sarah. I need you to let them know that we've got everything under control in here," David instructed as he moved towards the front door with purposeful steps, while Zeth'ara watched him go from across room without moving, but her eyes never left his figure until door clicked shut behind him, signaling start of negotiations. The night was cool, a crisp chill biting at David's skin through thin fabric of t-shirt worn over well-defined muscles. He took deep breaths, trying to calm racing thoughts, as he stepped out onto porch where floodlights from approaching vehicles cast long shadows stretching ominously across lawn and driveway now littered with tracks left behind by wheels carrying men and women trained solely for task ahead. Commander Harris, a middle-aged man in full military regalia, complete with helmet underarm that reflected light of lamps above door entrance to home, stepped forward immediately upon spotting David. "Sullivan," he greeted without wasted pleasantries before getting straight down to business. "We've received intel confirming presence. Here matches description provided." David nodded solemnly, meeting eyes across from him evenly despite knowing full weight responsibility carried by a decision now resting squarely on his shoulders. "We know the risks involved," Harris continued bluntly. "Our orders are clear and non-negotiable." "But you don't understand," David began cautiously, trying to bridge gap between necessity of duty and compassion needed in rare circumstances like these, which called for deviation from standard protocol, but only under dire conditions, indeed justified here. Harris raised an eyebrow skeptically, though made no move towards interrupting him further, giving instead tacit permission to continue speaking freely while security personnel stationed around perimeter ensured this conversation remained private, albeit highly monitored through unseen cameras trained on every angle of their meeting spot, framed perfectly by floodlights overhead, casting everything into stark clarity devoid of shadows. "I know we received report of Zeth'ara presence," David continued steadily, hoping somehow that Commander Harris could see beyond surface-level information and recognize humanity shared even amongst species deemed threats under prevailing global consensus. "But you must also understand the context. Harith isn't just an alien." Harris narrowed eyes slightly in question, but stayed silent, waiting for rest of explanation. "This is a mother," David said with conviction, choosing his words carefully to convey gravity, yet avoid outright antagonism, which would only serve further entrench fears rather than allay them. "A scared creature far from home and children protecting her." Commander Harris' face remained impassive throughout, but there was something in the way he shifted slightly under weight of those last few words suggesting perhaps, just maybe, seeds planted by David's plea might start taking root. Meanwhile, inside house, Sarah had taken charge, quickly organizing kitchen into makeshift command center, coordinating efforts between family and media, who were already starting to gather outside. She ensured live stream setup was functional while keeping Emma occupied upstairs, far from immediate danger, but within earshot should need arise for her presence. Lights flickered slightly as power grid strained under sudden surge of activity both inside house and outside, where military personnel had set up camp amidst lawn, now cordoned off with bright yellow tape stretched tautly between stakes hammered into ground, forming rough perimeter around property. Soft murmurs carried through airwaves, even though conversation was meant to remain hushed, evidence of growing unrest building among neighbors who had seen arrival too and couldn't help but be curious despite warnings against approaching. Zeth'ara listened quietly throughout entire ordeal, feeling overwhelming sense of vulnerability, mixed with profound gratitude for human family risking everything just so she might have chance at survival. She was wounded, terrified, and yet somehow felt safer now, wrapped in fabric woven together through acts of kindness rather than chains binding would-be captors meant only to enforce strict laws governing interactions amongst species deemed threats by default. Her black eyes never left Sarah, who busied herself preparing for worst-case scenario while simultaneously trying her best to stay calm amidst rapidly unfolding events. It was clear from Sarah's actions alone that she saw not Zeth'ara threat, but frightened being in need of protection, something so foreign yet strangely familiar now after brief time spent amongst humans. David returned shortly thereafter, face grim yet resolute, as he re-entered living room, where Zeth'ara and Sarah waited anxiously side by side. "They are standing down," David announced without preamble, though tone left no doubt about severity of situation despite apparent shift in protocol allowing for some form leniency not previously anticipated. Zeth'ara's gaze snapped towards him instantly, eyes wide with surprise, mixed undercurrents, hope beginning to take hold as realization dawned that perhaps humanity wasn't entirely lost after all. Note when such compassion could shine through barriers erected out fear and ignorance alike. Sarah let out long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding tight within chest before wrapping arms around David briefly in silent thanks for whatever it was he had managed to accomplish amidst intense negotiations taking place just moments ago outside under watchful eyes of military personnel now waiting anxiously for further instructions from their commanding officer, whose orders had changed at last moment. "Commander Harris said they'll send medical team," David elaborated softly, explaining next steps while ensuring everyone understood clear parameters established, allowing time necessary to gather proper resources needed without compromising security measures already in place designed primarily to safeguard against potential threats rather than assist injured beings caught amidst crossfire of misunderstanding and prejudice. Zeth'ara nodded understandingly, though she couldn't help but feel overwhelming sense relief washing over her now that immediate threat had been neutralized, at least for time being. She reached out gently towards Sarah, offering small gesture of gratitude, which was accepted willingly despite cultural differences clearly present between them, making interaction all the more poignant amidst backdrop chaos unfolding just beyond thin walls separating safety inside from uncertain world outside. Emma appeared then suddenly, having sensed shift in mood amongst adults and wanting to be part of whatever resolution had been reached. She ran forward eagerly, throwing herself into embrace shared by Sarah and Zeth'ara once more before looking up at David, expectantly waiting for next set instructions now that immediate crisis seemed past its peak, though dangers remained ever present, lurking just beneath surface. The room filled with warmth as family gathered closely together, forming small oasis amidst storm gathering force beyond their control, yet somehow still managing to find hope in simple acts. Kindness extended freely across species boundaries. Emma felt a sudden fluttering excitement as she heard voices soften and saw people moving about purposefully yet cautiously around her living room. She knew something had changed, but wasn't sure what until Sarah gently guided her toward the window to look outside. "Look, Emma," Sarah whispered softly, pointing out towards the vast expanse of park beyond their yard. A soft hum began to permeate the air, and a faint glow was visible on the horizon, a light that grew steadily brighter as it approached. "What is that?" Emma asked with wide eyes, her gap-toothed smile turning into an expression of awe mixed with concern. "That's Zeth'ara's ship," David replied calmly from behind them. "They're here to take her back." Emma turned around quickly, looking at each adult in turn. David and Sarah stood beside the window, their expressions a mix of relief and tension. Emma could sense that they were all waiting for something more than just the ship's arrival. A few moments later, as if on cue, Commander Harris stepped into view from outside with a small team of military personnel following closely behind. The group moved deliberately but not aggressively towards David's door, stopping momentarily to exchange brief nods and hand gestures before entering inside. "All right," said David once they were all gathered in the living room again. "Commander Harris has given us permission for the medical team to come in as soon as possible." Zeth'ara listened intently from her position by Sarah's side, her eyes flickering with a mix of gratitude and apprehension. She reached out tentatively towards Emma once more, offering another soft gesture that she hoped was understood. "Will they hurt you?" Emma asked bravely, stepping forward to place her small hand in Zeth'ara's larger one. "No," replied Zeth'ara firmly but gently. "I have been given the chance to leave safely." A loud rumbling noise drew everyone's attention back outside, where the light from the approaching ship intensified dramatically. The atmosphere grew tense as people waited and watched, knowing that this was the moment of truth after days of tension. David cleared his throat, addressing the group. "All right, folks, let's keep things moving smoothly here." He turned towards Commander Harris, who nodded in agreement before taking control again himself. "Commander," David began formally yet respectfully, "we have prepared as best we can for their arrival based on what information has been shared so far." The room fell quiet once more. Minutes ticked by slowly until finally a large metallic craft descended gently into the park area beyond Emma's house, landing softly without any sound other than that of its stabilizers engaging and retracting smoothly. "It's here," Sarah breathed out in near disbelief as they watched through the window with bated breaths. Commander Harris made his way towards the front door once more. "We're ready for them now." The group waited anxiously, Emma squeezing David's hand tightly while looking over at Zeth'ara, who returned her gaze evenly and calmly. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked quietly to their guest alien, placing a warm hand on her shoulder. Zeth'ara nodded solemnly before turning towards the door as well. Now that it was time for everything to unfold publicly under close watch of officials present, they're ready to ensure protocol would be followed despite recent changes in approach based largely due unforeseen circumstances, bringing all sides together unexpectedly closely over past few days' events leading up here today. Commander Harris stepped outside first, signaling his team around the ship's entrance. Zeth'ara moved slowly behind him under escort, but still managed to maintain her dignity and composure, even as cameras flashed brightly, capturing every moment of this unprecedented interaction between Earthlings and Zeth'ara, alike both sides now finding common ground through empathy rather than fear. When she reached a safe distance away from house proper, Sarah stepped outside herself, followed closely by David, then finally Emma, who stood tall beside them all, still clutching onto her parents' hands, firmly yet determinedly. Zeth'ara stopped short before Commander and his team, signaling intent to speak face to face with humans present here as witnesses, rather than subjects of observation or control. "This is not what I expected," Zeth'ara admitted quietly, addressing David directly, but also speaking loudly enough for camera crews nearby to pick up her words clearly. "But it seems you have honored our agreement. I can see why people might be afraid," David replied honestly from where he stood beside Sarah and Emma, now visibly together, forming a united front against whatever came next, despite circumstances surrounding their unique situation still being very much in flux. "Yet this is not how peace begins," Zeth'ara countered sharply yet respectfully. This kindness, it changes everything." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears as she watched interaction play out, feeling immense pride and relief wash over her, seeing how far they had all come since little girl found injured alien in park weeks ago. Commander Harris stepped forward now, making his presence known again, officially based on new information provided by our Zeth'ara guest here. "We've altered some procedures, but everyone understands need for safety measures, while also respecting individual rights involved." David nodded appreciatively at Commander's statement, recognizing clear efforts made towards compromise and mutual understanding between sides present today. "Thank you," Zeth'ara said sincerely, turning back to them briefly before moving forward again, under escort, now heading directly towards ship itself rather than stopping off elsewhere first like some had anticipated might happen, considering her position amongst Zeth'ara hierarchy, traditionally viewed as highly threatening by other species due their reputation alone, regardless of current situation here on Earth. Before leaving, however, she knelt down suddenly in front of Emma, who stood rooted to spot, unable to take eyes off alien moving so unexpectedly towards her now. "You changed everything," Zeth'ara declared softly, but with profound weight and meaning conveyed through mere words themselves, without needing grand gestures or declarations typically associated such monumental shifts. Emma blinked rapidly, trying process enormity significance behind simple yet powerful statement shared between them, before looking up at face of Zeth'ara kneeling there, humbled by small child's brave compassion displayed so openly throughout ordeal thus far on Earth for all to witness, especially those now gathered here surrounding ship, preparing watch as next chapter begins in this unprecedented story unfolding right under noses, almost literally. "Will you visit?" Emma asked, voice barely above whisper, but still clearly heard over ambient sounds of crowd gathering nearby. "I will return," Zeth'ara promised solemnly, before reaching out with her hand to gently touch side of Emma's face, a Zeth'ara gesture signifying deep respect and admiration. "Humanity's greatest weapon isn't your ships or soldiers, it is the hearts of children like you." With those final words spoken, she stood up gracefully, once more turning back towards ship, as if acknowledging profound shift in how both species will view each other moving forward, based largely on simple but monumental act kindness displayed by small child named Emma. That day, amidst park filled with hope, returning amongst otherwise bleak circumstances, threatening to derail any chance at truly meaningful contact between worlds. Emma watched quietly, now tears streaming down cheeks, freely, unable to stop themselves, as she waved goodbye, seeing figure of Zeth'ara ascend back aboard ship. Moments later followed closely behind by escort team, still on guard, yet visibly more relaxed, knowing outcome will be positive rather than negative based on events leading up here today, proving humanity's willingness to embrace change when presented with opportunities for growth and understanding, even amidst great uncertainty. As alien craft lifted off, finally leaving park grounds once again under watchful eyes of gathered crowd, Emma turned back towards her parents, who pulled her into tight embrace, sharing moment privately amongst family before stepping outside themselves to join others in watching final departure of ship carrying away mysterious visitor whose arrival weeks ago had begun long journey leading up here today. Thank you, Commander Harris added sincerely, turning towards David and Sarah, acknowledging their roles as facilitators and mediators throughout whole ordeal, proving that even amidst difficult situations, humanity's capacity for compassion and understanding could prevail over fear and ignorance, if given chance to shine through. David nodded solemnly, accepting praise while maintaining steady gaze, with Sarah, who stood beside him now looking out at park, once more reflecting upon the incredible journey they had all been on together despite challenges faced along the way. And thank you, David spoke up finally, addressing Commander directly, but also speaking loudly enough for crowd listening closely nearby to hear clearly what he said next, for giving us this chance to show that first contact doesn't always have to come through governments. It can happen when a child sees someone hurting and offers them a hug. With those final words hanging in air, amidst quiet murmurs of agreement spreading amongst gathered observers still watching ship disappear into distance beyond park horizon, where it would continue journey back home, carrying message sent out by an unlikely alliance formed between Earthlings and Zeth'ara, thanks largely to bravery displayed by small child named Emma Sullivan, whose simple act kindness had set wheels turning towards future possibilities now just beginning to unfold in wake of historic events witnessed that day.